Glenn Dean, welcome to the Undraped Artist podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, man. I was just looking at your bio. You were born in 1976. I was born in 4. When's your birthday?
It's December 17th.
Oh, so you're a full 2 years younger than me. Mine's November 13th.
Oh, yeah?
But
okay.
The reason that's relevant...
Happy belated.
Hey, thanks, man. I just turned 50. Yikes.
Okay.
But the reason it's relevant is because I saw a post on your Instagram where you were breakdancing as a little kid back in 84 and 5.
Yeah.
I did the same thing at that age.
Did you?
I was so into Michael Jackson, and I would like perform to Beat It all the time for my parents and my siblings.
Yeah, same here. I was like so into Michael Jackson.
Yeah. Except it looked like you got down on the ground. I never got on the ground. I was all about the pop, doing the waves and the miming and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, I had a weird transition from Michael Jackson to like Black Sabbath.
No, seriously? Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, and I just I was wearing like members only jackets and
yeah, it's funny.
I don't know, having fun with different music styles.
Well, I went from that to rap, and then I ended up being really into like Depeche Mode and Erasure by the time I graduated from high school. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, good times.
Yeah.
Well, it's great to have you on. I invited you because I'm a huge fan. I absolutely love your work.
Well, thanks, Jeff. Likewise.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. But and it's funny because I'm not a Western guy. I'm originally from New York, and I've said this to other Western painters I've had on, but I never used to be that interested in Western art. But some of you guys sort of, I don't know how to put this, but your work is so much more than the subject.
Mm.
I don't have to be into horses and cowboys to love your work. And that's what's so cool about it. It rises above the subject.
I feel like that's maybe the difference, because some of the guys that I think you might be referring to are guys that aren't cowboys. They're not ranchers. They're not, they haven't been raised in that lifestyle. So their take on Western art is more of an aesthetic take versus the trying to convey the lifestyle to other people that know the lifestyle. So it's more of about making pictures and making interesting pictures. And so I feel like that could be the difference there.
Yeah, that might be true. Yeah. And is that how you would describe your own relationship with it?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not, I wasn't raised around horses or anything like that. And I hardly know them on that level that a rancher might. So it's purely just a vehicle for expression and making art. Yeah.
So where are you originally from?
From Southern California, actually. A town called Torrance, or a city called Torrance, and grew up down there surfing and skateboarding and stuff like that. So. Oh
yeah. So you're not you don't have the rancher lifestyle in your background at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I was in high school.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. When I was in high school, my parents moved to Arizona, and they let me stay on the coast. But my visiting them really opened my eyes to the West. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I might have discovered it later on my own, but that was combined with the time when I started painting and seeing the West, and it really kind of made a big difference for the path that I took.
Huh. Who was that? Was it Bill Anton? Yeah, it might have been Bill Anton. I don't remember 100%. I'm looking at my website right now and I still can't remember. But anyway, yeah, his parents had taken him from back east, I believe, to Arizona. And then same thing. He was like, this place is amazing. And then as soon as he turned 18, I think he said he moved to Colorado.
Okay.
and just wanted to be in the West. And he ended up in Arizona. I might be getting the details wrong, but it's the same deal. As a city guy, and he just, once he discovered the West, he just couldn't wait to grow up and move out and get out to the
Yeah.
West. So
Yeah. It has quite an allure, I think, for the people that can see it. It's something that you can't really shake. You have to immerse yourself in it.
you must have been exposed to the good parts of it right off the bat, because when I moved to Utah, and it's different too. I guess you're coming from Southern California, which is kind of dry. But when I moved to Utah, I came from New York, and it's green. It's like, do you remember the chia pets from back in our
Yeah.
day? It's like, I remember flying out of New York the first time I ever flew. I was probably 17, and flying out, and it's like the whole landscape is just like a chia pet. You can't see any houses, nothing, because it's just everything canopies over the homes. If you fly out in the fall or in the winter, you can see homes everywhere, but in the
Hmm.
summer, it's just like a canopy of green. And then I flew into Salt Lake City, and it felt like I'd never seen the desert. It felt like I was landing on the moon, and I thought it was the ugliest thing
Hmm.
I'd ever seen in my life. But
Yeah.
I've grown to love it. But it took some time. It took me like 12 years, and it not like 12 years. It was 12 years, and it was when I went to Zion's National Park for the first time. I'm like, all right, the West wins. Okay, green is beautiful, but holy crap. So,
Yeah.
what did you see first? How were you so converted right off the bat? You must not have shown up in the middle of barren Nevada type of stuff. I mean,
Well, I had been exposed to some desert painters like Maynard Dixon and Edgar Payne before seeing the desert. So
oh,
that was a huge component to my being sort of amazed by the desert.
so
Because,
you were looking for it. You were out there ready to.
well, no, I was just kind of realizing it. You
Mm.
see it in paintings, and then when you experience it in person, you get it. You get the blue of the shadows, you get the neutrals and the subtle harmonies. And the sort of desolate feeling, and all that stuff is meant to be experienced in person, obviously. But the paintings have were something that gave me a little bit of a preliminary taste, I guess.
Hmm. So you were exposed to painting as a child. Tell me more about that. What's your past look
um,
like?
yeah, a little bit. My mom paints, and we had some artwork in the house, and nothing substantial, but she did have a couple John Asaro paintings. He was probably um, the as far as artwork hanging in the home, that was probably the most substantial. And even to this day, I mean, John Asaro, he's incredible. And but my growing up was very, I wasn't looking at art. I was a kid, and but that stuff was kind of in the background.
Did
And
you know you wanted to be an artist as a kid, or?
so when I was 13, um, my mom, I expressed some interest in she was painting a painting, and I expressed an interest in it, and she said, well, here, take these brushes, and I'll close the door. And and I went in the room and just did a little painting. Um, and that was my first oil painting at 13. But and then I didn't pick it up again until maybe I was 19 or something like that. But that really planted a seed for my the rest of my life. Really, just kind of planted a seed of deep interest in who I am, I think. And that painting, actually, my grandpa bought it. So
No way. That's sick.
I think he paid $30 or something, but it was like such a weird experience for me as a kid, Um, and
To sell it or to paint it?
to paint it and to sell it all in the same few days. It was just very
Hmm.
encouraging.
Do you think if you hadn't had someone like your grandpa to sell it to, that the bug might not have stuck?
I I think it still would have stuck for sure.
Really?
My parents were very encouraging and supportive, um, and that really is, I think, key. I think a lot of successful artists that I talk with today, they come from families where the parents were supportive and supportive and encouraging of them pursuing whatever they want, and I think,
Yeah.
and that's a big component, when you have, some resistance. If you say, oh, mom, dad, I want to be an artist, and they're like, oh, I don't know, maybe you should pursue something more practical or something, that's way more common. And it's unfortunate because I think the world is missing a lot of artists because of that.
Yeah, that's my story.
Oh, really?
Somehow I ignored them. I don't know.
Wow.
I mean, my parents are incredible. They're very supportive in their own way, and their way of supporting me was saving me from myself and my quote
Mm.
unquote ignorance about the world, you know?
Mm.
So,
Well,
but
yeah,
good
it
parents.
takes
Yeah.
it takes ignorance, though. It takes that kind of like, you got to put your blinders on and just pursue what you think is right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think, well, hats off to you for having that resistance and going for it anyway. And the
Yeah.
world benefits from having your work out there. So,
Well, to be fair, they still sent me to school. They did allow me to study art. They just thought it would wear off and I'd someday grow up and realize it's all a pipe dream. So, but they're
yeah, I mean,
incredibly supportive in every way that they were capable. But that's cool. So, in what way were your parents supportive? Were they just like, "You can do this. You can be a fine artist," or
yeah,
what?
it was, they just kind of took my interests seriously.
Hmm.
And I think, like, before painting and art, I was surfing. I was riding a bodyboard, and I used to compete and stuff. And
Wow.
my parents were supportive of that. And that was, I don't know, I think maybe just because they saw that I was dedicated to it and putting in the time to learn and grow and get better. And
When
so
you say they
when,
were supportive, did they believe that you could become a professional surfer or something, or they just thought they just
yeah,
had the attitude they did? So it wasn't
mhm,
just like a general support that they would have given you for anything, regardless of it's a career. It's they actually thought that you could become a surfer, and they actually thought you could become an artist.
yeah, because I was working at it. I'd bring home the trophies of the competitions, and then I got sponsors, and I
Oh,
ended
so you
up,
were legitimately proving your worth as a surfer.
yeah, I guess
Okay.
so. So then when I started painting, that was it's obviously very different. You don't get sponsors, and but you get in galleries, and that
Mm-hmm.
is sort of the equivalent, I guess. And so they saw that I was working at it every chance I got.
But not till you were
And
19, though. What were you doing between 13 and 19? Just surfing and skateboarding and stuff?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and
Yeah,
being a
that's
high
my
school
story too.
student and stuff like that. Yeah,
I mean, not the surfing, but the skateboarding and everything but painting and drawing.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I started messing around with art again in high school, but that kind of art was more sort of fantasy, or just
Mm-hmm.
weird creatures and stuff like that. And it was on one of the visits to my parents in Arizona, because my mom at that point had been out there a couple of years, and had joined some painting groups, and actually had helped form a painting group in Tucson called the Tucson Plein Air Painter Society. And so she had been meeting some other artists that were members of Plein Air Painters of America and those kind of groups. And so I went out there, and she's like, yeah, let's go landscape painting. And so I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. So
Hmm.
we went out there, and that was like a life-changing experience because I didn't do a great painting or anything, but just the act of being out there and trying to paint what's in front of you really opened my eyes to see very clearly that that is something you can do your whole life and never reach the end, And so, and then I was also meeting people that were professional artists, working outdoors and making a living, and so that kind of changed everything on one of those visits to Arizona. And then I went back to California and started painting landscapes a lot more. And every chance I got, I was working and going to school and doing all these things, but every chance I got to paint, I was painting.
Would you just
And
go out by yourself, plein air painting?
yeah, yeah. And I eventually would meet some people and started going out with small groups. But it's hard. It's hard to rely on others, for
Yeah.
your, uh, it's important. I mean, it's good to have a network of people that you can um, go out and do that stuff with. But I think when the moment strikes and if nobody's around, you're not going to wait for them. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to just get out there and put the miles on the brush.
So is
So
that how you
I just
learned? You just self-taught?
yeah, pretty much. And I bought a lot of art books too. So I think the combination of looking at a lot of art and spending a lot of time painting uh, was a good combo for me at least.
Are there any particular books that really changed your way of doing art or changed your way of thinking about art?
Um, Gosh, that's changed a lot over the years. But when I was first starting out, there were books that were more pertaining to starting out, which Kevin McPherson.
Mm-hmm.
Has a book on landscape painting, and that book had some nice approaches for a simple sort of understanding. And of course, and I had the Edgar Payne book at the same time, but that book's way more complicated. And even to this day, there's concepts in that are difficult to grasp because
Mm-hmm.
it was more written for his peers, I think, and so it takes a little more years of understanding or years of experience to understand what concepts he's presenting in that book. But that book has made a big difference too in my work. That's the composition of landscape painting, composition of outdoor painting by Edgar Payne. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then a lot of the other books were not instructional by any means. They were just art books, and looking at different artists, I think, was probably more informative, just to see different color palettes and color harmonies and paint handling and all that stuff. Because when you're out there and you do a painting and you come home, you look at it and you're wondering why it doesn't work, and so if you have something to compare it with that does work, then I think that's an important way to learn.
Do you still do that? Do you still come
Yeah.
home and compare? What do you open books up and look, or?
Well, no, I don't necessarily open books up. I feel like I have enough of a visual vocabulary maybe in my head to know when something's not working, or maybe know why it's not working, or maybe I spent too much time on a shape and I overworked it, or I didn't spend enough time mixing a color to harmonize with the rest of the key of the painting or something like that. So there's obviously different reasons for why a painting doesn't work, but and I always try to get to that as honestly as I can, without, I'm not trying to flatter myself by any means. So if I see that something's not working, I just look at it and say, okay, this sucks because this drawing's, I didn't draw that very accurately, or I painted this too quickly, or I mean, I have a stack of paintings that ends up getting destroyed at the end of the year, just because my process sort of involves that. It's they're not all winners, and even the ones that are successful, I often don't know it till later.
This episode is brought to you in part by Rosemary Brushes. If you're one of my listeners who's a professional artist, you're already using Rosemary Brushes. But for the rest of you, come on. Take your work a little more seriously. Stop buying the other brands. It's just not worth it. Every now and then you may get lucky and buy a good brush from another brand, but use the brand that professionals like myself are using. Go to rosemaryandco.com, link in the description or the show notes, and get yourself some quality brushes before your next painting. Is that why you wait until the end of the year? You want to sit on it for a while before you get rash and burn it?
Well, I used to just slash them like on the canvas with a utility blade,
like in the moment, right after you painted it.
Like during, like, just I'd get frustrated with what I'm working on and slash it, so I've gotten past that. That was that part.
You're having a hissy fit.
Yeah, because that and the reason I don't do that anymore is because I ended up taking a photo of a painting that I was working on, and then ended up slashing it while I tried to refine it. And later I looked at that photo and I was like, that wasn't bad. Like, why did I do that?
Oh no.
So now when something frustrates me, I just take it off the easel and put it against the wall and look at it later.
So that's why you wait till the end of the year. You've learned to not be rash about it.
Yeah. And sometimes it's okay, or sometimes it needs a little adjustment, or sometimes it's just bad painting and you have to destroy it.
Yeah.
And I have to destroy it because, or else it always kind of beckons you somehow. It somehow calls you to work on it. And if it's a bad painting and you don't know how to fix it, I think it's easier to walk away or get rid of it than to always have it nagging at you to try to make it work. And some problems can't be worked out on a painting, so you have to just start over, and maybe you'll get to it in another painting and have the answer.
Yeah, I don't know. I destroy my paintings that are bad because I need to destroy the evidence. I don't want anyone to know how bad I suck.
Yeah, it's like that too. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I've often told some of my students who, because we get hung up on Instagram. Everyone puts only their best work out, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't know really the range of any particular artist. You only know their best. So I've talked to my students about that, and we've looked through history books. Like take Waterhouse, for example. I've got several Waterhouse books, and I can't find more than 2 or 3 paintings from when he was young or when he was learning. Mm-hmm. They're just not there. But there had to have been a ton of them. Well, where are they?
Yeah.
And I assume he destroyed the evidence, like many artists probably did.
Yeah, I think that's important. If you want to leave behind something that is more along the lines of who you feel that you are as an artist, and the work that it took to get you there doesn't represent that.
Right. That's a good way of looking at it.
Then it's important to discard that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it, because it might seem somewhat inauthentic, but if you're writing a book, writing a novel, and you've got a bunch of stuff that you edited out, there's no obligation for you to keep those words. They're gone. It's not part of the novel anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, exactly. And if you're a photographer or something and you take 1,000 photos to get one good one, why does anyone need to see
the other
900? It's
that's true.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's very true. So how did you go from just painting whenever possible and working a job to breaking into the fine art world as a professional artist?
So again, back to my parents being supportive. My mom was like pretty excited about me painting. So, and she was kind of helping out at the time. So was actually, she made some calls to some galleries. Um, and I had some examples of my paintings that she had. I don't know. I don't even know if we were on digital back then. I think it was still slides. Um,
When was this?
um, this would have been 1999 or something
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
there's no way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's right. Because one of my last jobs, I was working at Staples, and I remember digital cameras were kind of coming on, and,
Yeah.
but everything looked so awful with them at the beginning, you know?
Yeah, I know for sure you were using slides because I left college in 2002 and I still have the work from then, the slides of the work that I shot from then, from my last year of college.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Sometimes I'll pull that little thing out and be like, what happened with
Right.
technology since then? It seems so archaic now, and it's only been
I
20 something years.
I know
It's
it moves
crazy.
fast. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so my mom was making calls to galleries, and got a couple appointments here and there, and so I ended up getting into some galleries. One was in Carmel, and I think one was in Tucson, and
How old were you now at this
at
point?
that I was, I think,
So you'd been like 23 in 99, about 23.
yeah, 22, 23. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And then it was a good time, I think, like, um, with the economy and things, for a young artist to maybe start making a few sales, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I often think about that because sometimes the economy is not great, and to be starting out as an artist, and it's like, man, yeah, this is not a good time for, for people spending money on things. But maybe young artists do better than more established artists because their work's cheaper. I don't
Yeah,
know.
maybe. Yeah, but you didn't
But
start during a recession or anything. This was 99, so it was good.
yeah,
But you had a
yeah.
recession in 2002, right? Didn't we have a
Um,
recession in 2002?
was there one? Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think so because I remember being like, man, this is crap timing because that's when I left school.
Mm,
It wasn't like the 2008 recession, but it was still pretty crap
yeah,
timing. But anyway, not to get off track. So,
no, but yeah, I don't remember.
okay.
But in general, it seemed like things were going okay, and I was selling some paintings here and there, and it was catching on, and so it basically, became, uh, I don't know, it seemed like a viable way to keep going. So I just quit working and quit school, and
All in the same year?
yeah,
Wow. So you started selling paintings as soon as you got in that gallery then?
yeah, and I don't know. So I was reaching that point where I like knew it was going to take 100% to jump in. So um, I asked my folks that year. This was the first year that I started showing in galleries. Um, I said, I need to do this full time. Um, can you guys sponsor me for a year, basically, with my expenses? And at the time,
You
it
came
was,
right out and asked a gallery this?
no, I asked my parents.
Oh, your pants. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
That makes a
and
little more sense.
yeah, that would have been a boss move to ask the
So yeah, you
galleries.
would have been. Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. But and my parents were like, yeah, let me. They had to think on it, because it was obviously. I mean, my expenses were low. It wasn't like a big financial thing. It was more of just like, can he do this sort of thing? That was the talk that my mom and dad had to have with each other. And And so then anyway, they agreed to it, and I started selling paintings and basically supporting myself within that first year. So
That's amazing.
yeah, I was pretty fortunate to again, back to the parental support. I feel like that made a big difference. Them fronting enough money for me to paint full time for a little while I start catching on my own.
Yeah, that's cool that you have that gratitude and recognition, but it probably just would have taken you longer if without your parents, but you still would have done it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd like to think of it as that. Yeah, I like to think I would get there eventually, but and it was the timing of it was like I had to. It was like it was so strong, the feeling of like, okay, I have to do this full time. There's no other way.
Hmm.
Because it was like consuming me in everything I did. So
So when you say there's no other way, you mean you're so consumed that if you went to work, all you'd be able to think about is painting anyway, and you'd be unproductive,
yeah,
or is it that you had to provide a certain number of paintings to succeed?
no, it was just that there was so much to learn, and it was all in front of me, and
Okay,
I had to dedicate myself to it.
gotcha. So
And
what did your work look like back then? Had you started implementing the horses and the cowboys and stuff, or was it just
no,
landscape?
there was just landscapes back then. Yeah, um, I took a workshop I took a couple workshops early on. One was with a guy named Ken Oster. I don't know if he's not with us anymore, but he was a great teacher. He was based out of Laguna Beach. And then a little bit later on with Matt Smith. I'm sure you're familiar
Yeah,
with
well,
Matt.
I've had him on the podcast.
Yeah, a great teacher as well,
Yeah,
great artist.
great guy too.
Yeah, and so those guys helped me to see how like a painting is done, basically.
Yeah.
When you're starting out and you don't know how to do it, it just seems so overwhelming. All the colors and all the you're looking at landscape, which is super complicated, and you're trying to simplify it and all that stuff. Um, so those guys showed me basically how to put something down on canvas that represents what you're looking at in a
In what
simplified way.
way did you study with Matt Smith?
It was like, honestly, it was, I think, a 2-day workshop or something.
That's it?
Yeah, it was a real brief sort of,
So it wasn't
uh,
even one on one. You're there with 15 other people.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It was one of the things that my mom, with her painting group in Tucson, she helped organize a workshop out there. And Matt was, I think, normally teaching in Scottsdale, but he came up to Tucson and taught out there for a couple of days. And there was, yeah, it was a group of us, I think 10 or 12 of us, something like that.
Wow. But that's not a long time. That must have been really impactful 2 days.
Well, yeah, it was just, like I said, just seeing how a professional artist puts together a painting, was, it's pretty important to be able to see that when you're starting
Yeah.
out, because it takes away a lot of um, the overwhelm and fear of how am I going to do this,
Did you
how is
notice a big difference after that 2 day workshop in your work?
um yeah, yeah, I did, and with Ken Oster as well. That was, yeah, I don't know, I mean, it ultimately wasn't necessarily the style that I wanted to work in, um but just seeing how paintings are done, from two completely different style painters too, I think was important for me as well,
Hmm.
to experience that. And then with that, and looking at art books and seeing how all those different styles of painting, um, I don't know, you just kind of end up finding your way, um, among all the different ways of painting a painting. There's 1,000 different ways to paint a painting, but which one is you,
Yeah.
And, and it takes experience to get there. And so I was just painting as much as I could and trying to stop along the way and figure out what I wanted to say or who I wanted to be as an artist.
Did you feel like at 23 you were well on your way to figuring out who you were, or were you just at the beginning of that journey?
Well, I think I was at the beginning, but it was also, I felt pretty, um, I had an idea of who I was. And I think I could still say the same today. I don't know exactly where I'll be in 10 or 20 years, but I feel like, um, the work I'm doing is part of who I am. And I think that was even true back then, I think.
I'm really curious what your work looked like back then. Would I be able to see it on the internet?
Um, I don't know that a lot of it exists
Oh,
anymore.
really?
Some of that, I mean, there's some, obviously there's things that sold along the way and stuff, but a lot of the failed attempts I ended up destroying.
Right. I've got so
Um,
much stuff on the internet that I wish wasn't. Oh
yeah.
man, it's bad. I didn't destroy things fast enough, or I didn't know. I wasn't smart enough to destroy some stuff.
Well, I can't imagine your work would even be anything you'd want to destroy. All the things I've seen were just incredible.
Well, thanks. But yeah, I have destroyed a lot. So that's probably why you feel that way. But so when did you get to a point where you started introducing figures and horses, and
Uh,
why?
so early with some of the desert paintings and canyon paintings and stuff, I would use little riders on horseback to help show the scale of a cliff or something like that.
But it would just be little silhouettes and things, nothing
Really
major.
small and often made up, and they were really clumsy, but they served the purpose of showing the scale.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Is that a good device? Did you find that was helpful?
um,
Did it improve paintings to show
I
scale that
mean,
way?
yeah, it depends on the painting. I think with cliffs like that, it's difficult to tell the scale without some human interest. It could be a structure, um, or a person, I think. But like a tree can look like a bush
Yeah, that's true.
if it's so it's difficult. But I think it does help with
Hmm.
certain settings. I think to show the contrast of scale between a human and the surroundings. Um, so then I think, I don't know when I was doing that, but that was probably early on. I think in that sort of early 2000s, because that's when I started painting canyons and Canyon de Chelly and places like that, and Monument Valley, and those were the subjects that were kind of calling for some of the implementing and using writers and stuff for scale. And then I think, so I didn't really start showing any close-up figures until it was after my father passed away in 2011. And it was after that, I just started realizing that life is short. Like, if you have something you want to do in your life, like, do it now.
Mm-hmm.
And I had always, I mean, all my art books and stuff are all mostly figure painters and stuff. The figure in art is a huge influence and inspiration for me, but I was always kind of afraid to do anything with it because, when you have artist friends like Jeremy Lipking and those guys that are just capable of such high quality in their work, and you look at your own attempts and you think, oh, I can't do that. What's the point? Anyway, I'm digressing a bit, but
Was he actually your friend, or is he actually your friend?
yeah.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, that would be humbling.
Yeah,
He's quite the figure painter. I mean, if you've never figure painted before and you're hanging out with Jeremy, that's
yeah,
he sets the bar pretty high.
yeah, definitely. And Logan Ajej
Oh yeah, I've
too.
had him on here. He's great.
Yeah, yeah, those guys are so good.
Wait.
And
Do you talk to Jeremy Lipking still?
yeah,
Can you
yeah.
please tell him to get on the freaking podcast? Like, I cannot.
Okay.
I message him, he'll respond and say, let's do it. And then I won't hear from him for 3 months. And then I'll message him again. Are we going to do this? And then I won't hear from him. And then it's just this whole thing. Anyway, I could use a little help there.
Busy guy. You gotta show up at his door with a microphone.
Seriously, man. Anyway, sorry. That'd be great. Just, just a little nudge would help.
All
I'd
right.
love to get him on.
Yeah. No,
But
he'd be good.
yeah, he would. Anyway, so how did you overcome that fear?
So after my dad passed, I decided I wanted to just jump in more with studying the figure a little bit more. Excuse me. And so I actually was driving to LA, I think twice a week to study drawing. And there was the California Art Institute, which was in Thousand Oaks area.
Mm-hmm.
There was a guy named Glenn Orbick teaching there, and that's, I think, that is who Jeremy studied with, and I knew that his style was just real direct and clean, and it was something I wanted to learn more about. So anyway, I dedicated myself to trying to learn how to draw more, and at the same time, Jeremy was doing a weekly class at his studio on the same night as where it was a day where I would have life drawing, head drawing, and some other class at the California Art Institute, and then in the evenings go paint or draw the model at Jeremy's studio. So it was like a full immersive kind of experience, and it was good for me. And that, I don't know, that was probably around 2011, 12, something like that. And then I think I started showing my first figure paintings around 2013, 14.
That's not that long ago.
No. Yeah, and just been trying to learn. I still go to life drawing, and there's this head painting session too, but I don't know.
You've
It's
conquered
hard.
it though, man. I'm like watching the slideshow as you're talking, and your figures are great. I mean, it's nothing like Jeremy's, because your figures feel like you're simplifying them in a way that fits the way you simplify the landscape. It makes it really nice and harmonious with the landscape. But your drawings feel spot on. Like, I haven't seen anything remotely weird or awkward. They're awesome.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah. Well, I can show you a pile of the awkward.
Yeah, like you said, we all can, right? Yeah, but no, these are great. And I was noticing as I was looking through them, how much you do simplify. I mean, the faces, a lot of times are just shadows for the eye sockets, shadow under the nose, and there's a mass for the rest of the face. Like this one here, this Native American.
Yeah.
Very simple, but yet totally convincing.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, I don't like to get too specific. I like to keep it pretty generalized when it comes to a figure. I don't want it to look like somebody, I want it to look like a people versus a person.
That makes it more marketable. I mean, I'm not suggesting you're doing this just to sell it. I think you're
Mhm.
probably doing this because that's what you want your paintings to be. But that's
Yeah.
got to make them easier to sell because you don't have to live with some dude in your house that you don't know, right? Some cowboy that you for whatever reason, you don't like his face because you're kind of simplifying
Mhm.
them to such a degree that we don't have to accept that human. We just accept there's a cowboy.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of that goes back to the looking at a lot of art books too. You see, guys like NC Wyeth and anytime they painted a character or a type, uh, it wasn't anyone you felt like had a name necessarily. It was just like a type, it was like
Mm-hmm.
a robust figure to represent something, or a delicate figure to represent something. It wasn't a specific person that he was trying to get, um, other than the character.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I try to approach it like that. I'm not anywhere near that level, but it's similar mindset, at least, to what I'm looking at the figure as, maybe.
Well, I disagree with you about that. Your
uh,
your observation. You are. I think you are at that level. But well, I
Shit.
wonder
Thanks.
what do you think is what do you think was the hardest thing about transitioning from landscape to landscape with figure?
um well, the landscape, you can move things around, and you don't have to be exact. And with the figure, it's a little more, the structure is like so contained, and so you can't mess with it. It's like it's there, it's set, you have to honor that. And you can't I mean, yeah, you can move limbs and move the head to face a different direction or something like that, but the with landscape, I mean, for years and years it was all just, oh, I'll put this here and I'll put that there, and you're making compositions based on the elements that are in front of you. So, and then when it came to focusing more on the figure, it was more like, okay, this is a set structure. It has its limitations. You can put it in these positions, but that's as far as it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um and I feel like when I started adding the figures as the central part of the composition, and having the landscape more, I don't know, secondary is the right word, but maybe so. Um, it seemed to give more of a purpose for the landscape, or like made the landscape setting maybe more impactful.
Gives it context.
Yeah, yeah, it helps the viewer, imagine themselves in that context. And I think when I was just painting straight landscapes, I thought I was doing that with just empty landscapes, but it's difficult for the viewer to place themselves in that without having some visual component that they can attach themselves to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the figure, I feel like, does.
I've been doing Jeff's online mentorship program for about a year now, and it is awesome. Everything is online, super streamlined. If you can be there, I mean, you have the ability to talk to him once a week and he can review your work and help you. If you can't be there, it's pre-recorded. You can go back and even re-watch things if you missed something during class or couldn't be there. So the online portion of it is almost better than real life because you can always go back to it, which is awesome. The demos are recorded. It's just like all available whenever you need it. And I'm a stay-at-home mom of 4, and my time is limited, and it's also very interrupted. And so to be able to go back has been clutch for me. And you get to work with Jeff HEIN, who's awesome. He's tough. The assignments are simple, but difficult, and they're difficult to make us all better. and he's able to give us these assignments, coach us through it, help us stay excited to progress. And so it's just been a great experience. I am so grateful that he has been willing to take time away from his own art to offer all of us to have it. So if you're thinking about doing it, it's amazing.
To learn more about how you could have me as a personal mentor, check out the link to HEINatelier.com in the show notes or video description. So you learned, I'm assuming, mostly plein air based on how you describe
Yeah.
your education. So now my guess is you had to incorporate photography at least to some degree to do what you're doing now.
Yeah.
How was that transition? I mean, how did that go, and what compromises did you have to make? What difficulties did you face? What advantages did you face?
Well, I mean, outdoor painting versus studio painting. Like I would try to paint from my studies, and they would honestly just get more reduced. Like what I mean by that is when I go out and I paint the landscape, I'm taking all that complicated landscape and I'm reducing it to a simplified statement. And if I try to paint from my study to do a bigger version or something,
just from your study, no photos. You mean just from your study, no photos at all? Okay.
If I would try to paint from just a study, it would just become more reduced and more simplified, and which is an interesting exercise. I still do that for fun, just to reduce down something where maybe I saw too much information when I was painting outdoors. But what I'm getting at is a lot of my studio paintings are all from photos, and I will reference my on location paintings while I'm working from photos, just to use color reference or a color harmony or something like that. So yeah, photography is a big part of my work in the studio for sure.
So do you go out once or twice a year and just do these major photo shoots and then you're good for a while? Or is this something like a weekly thing? Oh crap, I got to do another painting. Let's go out and do another photo shoot.
No, it's not that often. It's a 2 to 3 times a year.
Okay.
And
you just get a batch of scrap and then work with that for 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I have tons of outdoor paintings, and I work outdoors, not as much as I used to, but I still get out there and paint studies and stuff. So everything kind of comes together in the studio, all different references, I guess.
Yeah. As I'm looking at the slideshow and I take this painting here, that you can't capture that in a photo, because I would imagine that figure would just be silhouetted, right? And in order to expose the background. So how much are you improvising on? How much, I mean, are you improvising in the photo process? Or are you improvising in the painting process, or both? In other words, are you editing reference to get it to look as real as possible and then painting? Or are you painting based on your past experience from a bad photo?
Well, it's a little bit of both, but I feel like there's only so much you can do outside of the canvas. Like, it's like once you start painting on the canvas is when you make choices that you can't make in Photoshop or whatever.
Right. Like all these beautiful, now it just left, all those beautiful purple strokes down in there.
But yeah, so like with a late evening kind of painting, there's
that's the other one, by the way. That's the one where I was like, man, there's no way you could photograph that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
A lot of that's just based on memories and experiences of where we live, there's not a lot of light pollution. So when the moon comes up, it's pretty substantial.
Mm.
And it's pretty pure, the light. But anyway, some of these are more sunset-y effects. And for a while, almost the entire summer, I was going out and painting these little like 4x5 inch color notes. I would do 3 or 4 of them, and I wouldn't even start painting until the sun had gone down.
Mm-hmm.
So my window for productivity was like 20 minutes maybe before it got too dark. So I was literally just painting that sort of afterglow in the sky, and trying to understand those colors. And that summer was very informative for when I do a painting of that time of day. It allows me to tap into those memories of having done that. And so when I'm putting together a painting in the studio, I can say, okay, yeah, that's definitely going to be darker, or that's going to be lighter, or that's going to be more transitional, cool to warm, or something. These different memories come into play based on my experiences of trying to capture the certain time of day. And that's true for the sunny effect too, whether I'm painting a midday sun or something like that. I've painted plenty of that out landscape painting. And so I know how that looks on a subject or how it feels. And so when I'm painting a studio painting of that subject, it comes into play, those different memories.
I'm going to pull up your work now so we can just go through specific pieces instead of just a slideshow.
Okay.
You just described that it's your past experience and all of your time outdoors at various times of day, various weather conditions that give you this whole library, this mental library that you can draw on.
Mm-hmm.
But how much of it is improvised above and beyond the visual library? How much of it is, or how much of it are you faking? Because some of these seem just almost like magical, and I think it was Bill Anton again, who I was speaking to, who was like, I make up all these sunsets. A lot of this stuff's made up. Like, I mean, he's using reference and stuff, but he says a lot of it's just this color will look better here and that color will look better there. I mean, are you doing similar things?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. That was what I was saying before about, like, once you're on the canvas, that's when you have to make decisions that you can only make on the canvas, and that can be based on, let's say you block in your painting and it's different than you imagined and then you first pictured it. It's slightly cooler or slightly warmer or something. So if that's the case, then you have to key your other colors to that, or you have to, and sometimes you have to invent shapes to balance the composition where you didn't picture that in your preliminary study or something like that. It's all, I don't know, a lot of the sort of artful things happen on the canvas, I feel like, and not in your reference.
Yeah.
Because that's when you're tapping into, I don't know, you're just trying to make the picture work. So you're tapping into a little bit more of your what's the word? Not impulse, but your
artistic license,
your intuitiveness, your intuitive impulse, I guess, to know what is going to balance it, or what colors might help it pop here or there.
So is this one a little bit like your earlier work in that you've just got sort of silhouettes of tiny figures?
Yeah, they were even smaller than those and less refined. So they were more made up back in the day, but it was similar kind of idea, I guess.
Wow, these are great. Look at that. Yeah, your lighting effects are just gorgeous. You know, you had brought up Jeremy Lipking, so I'll make another comparison with him. One of the things that he's good at and that you're also very good at is he'll paint. He does a lot of people in the shade. He paints a lot of people in the shade where it's not direct lighting. And then when you do that, the values are really close together, really subtle transitions. And that's much more difficult than bright sunlight or a bright spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you've got here. This horse, these values are so close together on the side of this horse. And even with those close values, it's got so much volume to it.
Oh, thanks.
Nice. Yeah, it's really nice.
That painting was so hard. I remember because the values were so close that I couldn't see it. You know, it was one of those paintings that would dry matte while you're working on it.
Oh, that would make it brutal.
And it was just so brutal. And I was like trying to oil out while I'm working and all this stuff. And eventually I just committed to varnishing it and it ended up working. But it was like,
really?
But it was frustrating in the process, just knowing if it was even working or not, because the darks would dry like 3 values lighter than I put them down, and it's so hard to know what things are looking like when that happens, you know.
Yeah, especially when you don't even have 3 values across this horse.
Yeah.
So if one of them dries, that sinks in that much, you're toast.
Right. Yeah.
Huh. So you're working in layers then?
There's subtle layers, but yeah, depends. This was a painting that was, I think, 48 by 60, so it was a little bit larger, difficult to do in one sitting. So it had more layers to it. But so yeah, this one had some layers.
But you're not doing any processes that require layering paint. It just, if you layer it, it's because you didn't finish it the day before.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. That's an important distinction, really.
That's funny. So this painting was done right after the previous one because I was so like, I had to get in the sun after all those grays.
Look at that other one again. Yeah.
I needed some contrast in the sun.
Well, when you say get in the sun, you don't mean literally, you mean metaphorically, right? Because you didn't paint this on location, right?
No, it was metaphorically, yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that funny how painting a subject affects your mood so much?
Yeah, I wanted some contrast, you know. I mean, I had some subtle stuff in the shadow wall there, but I think in general I needed more contrast after coming off of that real subtle gray one.
Yeah.
So I went for the sunny effect there.
How do you know? I guess I kind of know the answer to this, but I'd love your thoughts on it. How do you know when to push something this much? Because it works. And I see this on a lot of desert paintings. And I know it's blue because of the reflection of the sky and so on. But it's not that blue, right? I mean, and yet somehow it works. But I've also seen people do it poorly where it's like, no, that's too much. Like, that's not working.
Well, I don't know. I've seen it pretty blue.
Really? Maybe I just haven't spent enough time in a desert.
And that one I might have pushed a little bluer, but it had to sit further back than the main wall of the canyon there. So because it had to sort of sit as an extension of the canyon going back. So if I kept it the same value as the forward cliff, it wouldn't have worked at all. So it had to sort of be a recessional effect there of being more blue.
Yeah, because it's more purple here, and then it gets less and less red in it until back here where there's like very little red in it. So these clouds, this is one of the things that's really, I've seen clouds painted in every way. But how you have a certain way of simplifying things like clouds and trees and bushes. and maybe this is an unanswerable question, but can you comment on that evolution, on how you went from just trying to copy a cloud out of the sky when you were 19 years old and to coming up with this really interesting way of interpreting the edges?
Um, it's hard. It's not something that I think I could really describe very well
Yeah, I thought that
with
might be the
words.
case. That would be hard for me to answer that question too.
Yeah, because it's, clouds, any moving form, it's like, it's so difficult. And I have the same thing when I'm painting like a crashing wave or something like that. There's so much change that happens in a short period of time. I mean, clouds are more observable for a longer period of time than a crashing wave. Um, but if you can understand the basic characteristics of a cloud in the sun and a cloud in shadow, and a basic perspective of the clouds that are closer to you and the ones that are further away, it's kind of like you can do whatever at that point.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying this painting represents a accurate example, but because a lot of this was me establishing a certain few shapes of clouds, and then the rest was just make it balance, so a lot of the things that add to the rhythm of this picture were all afterthought, kind of just making things up and painting things in, painting things out, and then reaching a final sort of harmonious feel.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's difficult with clouds, for me at least, to have one, like to paint a cloud composition without making changes along the way.
Yeah.
Because it just, they always call for some change, just because that's what their nature is. They're changing all the time.
Yeah, I'm just so interested in how you simplify them. The hard edges, they're just so, I don't know, they're really cool to look at, really interesting to look at. So one question technically, when you're standing in a landscape, if you're standing on the ground and the ground is obviously right in front of your feet, is obviously really close to you, right? You're literally standing on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at this cliff in the background and that's really far away, especially relative to the ground under your feet. Right. So there's going to be some major atmospheric perspective going on between the ground under your feet and the ground, on the cliff side.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But when you're looking up at a cloud, even the clouds overhead, the ratio of the distance between the clouds overhead and the clouds in the distance behind the cliff is much smaller than the ratio of the ground under your feet to the cliff. Does that make sense? So let me try and explain it one more time.
Yeah, one more time.
I don't think I've verbalized that very well. The cloud above your head, where my hand is here, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's quite far away from you. Even though it's in the foreground in the painting, it's actually quite far away from you, the viewer.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
Right. And the relative distance between the cloud closest to you and the cloud furthest from you is much smaller than the ground under your feet, the relative distance between the ground under your feet and the cliffside.
You think
right? Because the first cloud is already so far away, right? So the relative distance between the first cloud and the last cloud is going to be shorter than the ground and the cliff. Does that make sense? Or maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know. It might be further actually. It just depends. Like, so that distance between the foreground and that cliff in the middle ground or whatever is probably a mile.
Right.
It's not, if that. And then
so you think there might be a mile between this cloud, or more than a mile between this cloud and this cloud? I would have assumed that would be more like, to make my point, more like half a mile or a quarter of a mile.
No, the ones that are, I'm just looking way down the horizon, like that blue down there. That's going to be further away than a mile probably. But but
Oh,
those,
fair enough. Okay.
but those other clouds that are floating around with it are, yeah,
Well,
within
here's
that
the reason I
same.
ask, because you have created this incredible distance, because you've got these beautiful, subtle, close together values, and you've reduced the chroma so much so that these further clouds just recede so beautifully. And then you've increased the contrast so much on the clouds in the front, obviously warmed them up, which bring
Mhm.
them really far forward. And you created this incredible depth that I don't know if I've ever even seen that in the real world.
Hmm.
And that's why I asked that question, because it's like you're using the principles of atmospheric perspective. I'm asking if you're using the principles of atmospheric perspective even more than you would see them, and like exploiting them even more than you might see them.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. Now I want to go out and look at a cloudy, partly
'Cause,
cloudy day and see.
yeah, because some of that stuff, I think maybe the main cloud there is picking up a lot of warmth from the cliffs underneath.
Right.
And I'm sure you've seen that in Utah quite a bit, because there's a lot of red rock. Well,
In
that's
southern
more
Utah, not where I am. Yeah.
yeah, more southern Utah. Um, and it's amazing how
It really
the,
does that? It really
yeah, like
reflects, the clouds reflect the ground.
yeah, well, in the desert, when you're in red rock country, it seems like the belly portion of a cloud like that, the shadow of the cloud is very warm,
That's
and
crazy. I never
I
would have
can only
guessed.
really chalk that up to it bouncing, the light bouncing off the earth, basically.
Wow.
And because you don't see that on the coast, you don't see that in areas where it's more green or something, you know.
I wonder why you don't see green on the bottom of clouds in New York. No, I'm serious.
No, it might also be that it's so arid out there. There's just something more with how the color is more visible or something.
Maybe. Is it just me, or the rest of you guys also get weirdly excited when you order new paint? Because I don't know about you, but when I get paint in the mail, it feels like Santa just dropped my Christmas presents off at my doorstep. With Vasari paint, my paint of choice and the podcast sponsor, it's even more exciting. And let me show you why. Because when Vasari shows up, it comes in this incredible box where each tube lays in this little compartment perfectly formed around the tube in this nice soft foam. And it's surrounded by velvet, red velvet. Now you got to ask yourself, if a paint comes so carefully protected and surrounded by red velvet, you got to wonder if this paint is worthy of royalty. It is. Vasari is. So if you haven't tried Vasari, you're seriously missing out. And the thing about Vasari, it's not only the best paint out there, it's also made by an incredible company that's been around for 30 years and knows its customer by name. Do yourself a favor, go to vasaricolors.com and order yourself some for your next painting. Well, just for the record, I want you to finish commenting here, but just for the record, this is a compliment. I'm not picking your painting apart. I'm saying, wow, this painting has a lot of depth, and trying to understand if you're doing something to create more depth, or if this is how you would see it. Like, I don't know. I don't get it out enough to know.
I mean, I think you could very well see this.
Really?
Yeah. It's not, I don't feel like it's an exaggerated
Okay.
statement of how clouds work. I feel like that it's pretty honest with what they might do with their colors as they recede.
Yeah, I'm going to Scottsdale in January to
Oh,
teach a workshop on portrait painting.
Nice.
And which, by the way, isn't full for anyone listening. There's still a few spots left. But I've never painted in the desert, and I'm gonna stay out there another week and paint in the desert because I want to see this kind of stuff. I want to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should. And it's not far from, if you've never been to the Grand Canyon and places like that,
I have
it's
been to
not,
Grand Canyon. Yeah. It's
you
gorgeous.
have?
I have been. Yeah. I haven't painted there
Okay.
though. It's different
Yeah.
when you're visiting, it's different than when you're painting. When you're painting, you're looking hard,
Yeah.
right? And so even though I've been to the desert a million times, but I'm not looking when I'm at the desert, I'm not looking hard enough at the color underneath a cloud,
Yeah.
right? To mix it, right? But when I'm
Right.
painting, I have to mix it. Now I'm really looking, right?
Yeah. Right.
So that's the significant part. This is the first time I'll paint in the desert. I've been there many times, but this is the first time I'll paint in the desert. So I'm hoping
Okay.
to see this kind of stuff.
Nice. Well, that'll be
So
fun. Yeah,
yeah,
you'll see those shadows are that blue in some of
that's
those
wild.
canyons and stuff.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, it's just gorgeous. This is gorgeous.
Thanks.
Hmm. Yeah, again, those red clouds. So what time of day would this be? Dusk or
No,
something?
pretty middle of the day actually. I mean, I might have warmed those clouds up to just fit the painting better.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes the highlights on a cloud can be too cool.
Too cool
And
for the painting.
yeah,
Yeah.
and too contrasty. This was more keeping within a subtle contrast in the sky so that the main cliff can be silhouetted as the main contrast.
When you're plein air painting, are you going for absolute accuracy of color, chroma, tone, value, and so on, and then reserving these intuitive, more creative decisions for the studio? Or you make these these kinds of decisions like warming up the white of the cloud on location as well?
Yeah, sometimes I feel like my field paintings are a little more accurate, and maybe more boring in that in that regard as well, because it's difficult to finish a painting or do anything really that interesting outdoors, at least for me. I know some artists are great at that, but I tend to go out and paint what I'm looking at, and I might make some choices based on what I'm looking at to help the painting to be more successful. But for the most part, it's not a terribly interesting painting at the end of the day.
So is the main goal then is it more of a study time?
Yeah, it's study time. It's trying to get a light effect. Maybe just trying to get a shape or two, with some characteristics of the thing you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's basically subjecting yourself to possible failure based on trying to learn.
Do you have any examples of your plein air stuff on the website?
I think there are some if you go back out, there's a section, I don't know what it's called, archive works or something. Or no, archive small works. It was another category. Yeah, there might
Oh,
be.
cool. Yeah, I haven't seen this.
Yeah, some of those are little
So these are
field
plein
things.
air.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, they're very different. Yeah, you can tell you're really just trying to get the feel of the place.
Yeah, yeah,
About how big are these? Oh, it says on the bottom 8x10.
yeah, pretty.
Is that pretty standard for you? Carry around a bunch of 8x10 panels?
Yeah, especially since I've been living on the coast, it's difficult to paint any larger around the coast just because the fog might roll in and change things. And
Right.
so I've gotten used to painting smaller outdoors. But I've done some bigger things out in the desert, when the weather's more consistent for several days in a row. And I've taken a painting back the same day. I mean, next day, the same time. Worked on something over the course of 3 or 4 days, but I don't know. Lately, it's just going out and getting something in one shot if I can.
And about how much time do you spend outside for one of the? Oh, this one I really love. This one. How much time do you spend outside when you plein air paint? A couple hours or?
Yeah, anywhere from, like I was saying earlier about those, like after the sun has gone
Well, yeah,
down,
20
little
minutes,
paint.
but yeah.
Anywhere from 20 minutes to 3 hours or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, there's one of those wave paintings.
Yeah, but you can see a similarity to maybe the clouds, that
Yeah.
it's like a similar sort of.
That's a good interpretation, I think. I've painted on the beach before. Yeah. And it's like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah, it's pretty hard to paint such a moving subject,
Yeah. Oh, these
Some
are
of these
great.
go.
It's nice to see the
Oh,
studies.
go back one. So there's a couple little figures that was in an early painting. I know you can't see it very well, but they're just basically an indication of something. It's not, there's no drawing to it hardly, and they're just clumsy, but
Yeah, those little guys. They're like little bugs.
they're like riding pit bulls or something.
Is this an older one or is it recent?
No, that's a real old one. Yeah.
Yeah. So is this an actual example of one of your early ones then?
Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So that would be an
Nice.
example
We got to see it.
of how
That's
I would
awesome.
use
Cowboys on pit bulls. That's not the name of it though. That
No.
would have been a great name. No, that's good.
But,
Yeah, but they're so tiny. It's not like,
no,
what are you going to do with it?
yeah, and it's even to this day, it's hard for me to like paint small shapes with any kind of refinement. So
Yeah, that'd be hard for anybody.
yeah.
Huh. I love seeing these sketches because it helps me to understand your mind better. Like, because when you only see the finished work of an artist, it's hard to know how they get there. But when I can see the studies, I can it helps me to figure out the way you're thinking a little bit better.
Yeah, I personally wish there were more art books dedicated around artist studies.
Yeah, me too.
Because you see them occasionally in an art book. I'd be like, oh man, look at that unfinished portrait by so and so. But the most of the book is all these perfectly finished portraits or landscapes or whatever, but you don't hardly ever see the studies. And I think there's more to learn from looking at a study than there is from looking at a finished work of art.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those are great. Yeah, I'm glad you have that section. Let's see what else you got here. Archived works.
Yeah,
Other
maybe
works. What's in here?
Those are some sort of non-Western things.
That's cool. I didn't know you did this kind of stuff. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I want to do more like that. Just because I'm inspired by a lot of different things, and I'm trying to keep that separate from the Western stuff. And
it's still kind of the same though. I mean, it's not.
Well, it's
nostalgic like the Western stuff.
Yeah, it's maybe an era that's not current, but it's not exactly Western.
Right. There's no horses or cowboys.
Yeah.
But you could totally imagine one riding over that hill. For those who aren't watching, these are, I would say, 19th century dress. Couple of women with 19th century dress on a grass hill under a beautiful blue sky with some clouds. So it's a different look than cowboys and Indians. Do you have a vision? I guess you kind of addressed this early on. Sorry, I got distracted by this painting. I'm totally geeking out right now. Man, this is good. If anyone's not watching, you're crazy because you need to be seeing these paintings. But what was I going to ask you now? Totally got distracted by the painting. Oh, you'd said earlier you don't know where you'll be in 10 years, but do you have any ideas that you haven't tried yet that are sort of brewing in your mind?
I mean,
you don't need to share them if it's like top secret. I'm just a yes or no is sufficient.
I mean, yes. Yeah.
You do. Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. It's just matter of time or finding a way to put it together to make it so that I can paint them. But
I can't wait to see what this is.
I mean, when you're working with observation-based subjects, I mean, you have to see it first in order to get your ideas. I mean, for me at least, I know a lot of people can invent things completely out of their
Not
imagination.
me.
Yeah, I haven't been able to do that. So I have some ideas that are brewing in my imagination, but they would have to involve getting the right reference first to make it happen. And
So you'd have to travel or something. It's something that you just haven't gotten around to yet.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. But there's lots of those kind of things brewing. And yeah, it's just you never know what you're going to see along the way, and that can take your paintings and create a new body of work or something based on something you hadn't quite thought you'd maybe get to be in front of it at some point. I don't know.
Yeah. Here's kind of a strange question, but it's meaningful to me because I've got closet, like a huge closet. It's probably, how big is that closet? My studio's 25 feet across and it's almost the width. So it's maybe 20 feet across, maybe 18, 20 of all these costumes for biblical paintings. Some I've bought from the Middle East and Near East, and some I've bought, some are like North Africans, but the majority of them I've made.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's made for painting. So like it's single stitch, just it's not something that if you wore it every day would last very long.
Doesn't have to hold up.
Yeah, it doesn't have to hold up. It just has to look right, So don't be too impressed. But but it works for the painting because it just has to be the right shape, But I just wonder with you, with painting cowboys and women of the 19th century or whatever, early 20th century maybe. Do you have a library of costumes, or is this more something you rent, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, I have some stuff. It's not a huge amount. But it's enough to mix and match and put a few things together for a photo shoot.
That's cool.
But
you
yeah,
must have do you have like saddles and that sort of thing too, or that come with the horse when you rent the horse?
Yeah, that stuff, it usually comes with the rider. They have their own tack. I don't have any tack stuff. I don't get too specific. I'm not trying to make historically accurate pictures or anything like that. It's more just of a aesthetic feel that I'm going for.
Yeah, but that's the reason I make costumes, because with the Bible, no one knows what they looked like during the time of Christ. There's like a few Syrian relief sculptures of Jews during that period that suggest costume. That's about it, like 2 or 3. And so when I make a costume, it's so that I'm looking at yours, so that I have a pair of pants that has this shape and color, and I have a shirt that has this shape and color, right? It's not so much about accuracy as much as it is design.
Yeah.
And does that, or is that something that comes in post for you? You just need a pair of pants and a shirt, and then you'll make it whatever color you want in the painting.
Yeah, sometimes, but I like it to have the, at least the right fit or something.
Right.
And with the saddle and some of the tack, I usually just request from my writers or models that it's simple, and sometimes they have a bright saddle blanket or something that I don't want to paint, so I just change the color of that or something, so it's not super detailed in terms of getting everything right before I do a photo shoot. A lot of times I just kind of get what I can and do things on the canvas or whatever to make it work.
So this painting I'm looking at right now is 30 by 36. What the heck is happening right now?
I think it's square. It should be 36. Yeah, there. Okay, yeah, 36.
So it's really very loose.
Hmm.
Your work is very loose and kind of scumbly. Like I can see the canvas even under it. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Hmm.
Yeah, I really want to see one of these in real life. Where do you show?
Um, at a few galleries, there's Maxwell Alexandria Gallery
Oh, I
in
figured you must
Pasadena,
show with him. Okay. Yeah.
and then Legacy Gallery, and they're in Scottsdale. Oh, you might, yeah, if you go to Scottsdale, you might see some there.
You have stuff there now?
I'm not sure. They might have one painting there right now.
Okay, I'm going to be
Not
there in January. Do you mind shipping them one between now and January? I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd
And then
love
I'm
to
also
see.
with Medicine Man Gallery in Tucson. They're not too far from Scottsdale.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to see because it's never the same. The originals are always totally different than the experience of seeing them
Hmm.
online. But it is, I mean, I can learn a lot from it. I mean, that it's really interesting how scumbled it is. And then you can see the drawing of the horse's legs.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm more interested in the illusion of detail versus detail itself. Um, so like when you get up close, you're just like, oh, what am I looking at? It's just there's
Yeah.
not much there. But at first glance, it looks more rendered, maybe.
Yeah, like this stuff up here. That's
Hmm.
just like you went ninja with a brush and started making a bunch of strokes, but it looks, when you look at the painting as a whole and see that in your peripheral, it feels like little rocks and clearings and spaces in the grass. And
Hmm.
so do you do you have a pretty large studio? Are you stepping way back when you paint in order to make sure these illusions are working?
I do get back a lot, and I've had various studios over the years, but my current studio is not a huge space where I can get back really far, but I can get back far enough.
Hmm.
And if it's a really large painting and it's, I might use a reduction glass or something to
Yeah, I've
make
done
it.
that.
Yeah. Um, but for the most part, within the range that I generally work, I can get back far enough. Yeah.
Man. Yeah, the simplicity is so beautiful. It's like it's down
Thank,
here, it's like calligraphy. I mean that in a good way.
thank you.
Yeah. Well, man, this has been fun. Is there anything we haven't seen that you'd like to talk about? Something particularly meaningful or a painting you're particularly proud of or anything?
Um, I don't know, not that I can think of, I guess.
Okay. Man, that's a great one too. That's only 16 by 16. That's not too bad, but it's sold. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a bummer. Well, yeah, this has been cool, man. I'm really glad we did this.
Yeah, same here.
It's been great to get to know you a little bit. And so, just to be clear, you're currently living in Southern California again.
No, I'm in central coast of California, which is a town
Oh,
called Cambria. Yeah, it's right in between Los Angeles and San Francisco. So it's about 4 hours from where I grew up.
so how come you don't just move to, I mean, all these paintings don't look like they're from Central California. Most of them anyway.
Yeah, I know. I think I don't know. I grew up near the ocean, and it feels like home to me. Home to me to
Yeah, that
be
makes
near the
sense.
ocean. But I could easily live in the mountains or the desert. It's just right now this is home. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you just take regular trips out to the desert then to get scrap?
Fairly regular. Yeah, a couple times a year, I think.
Okay.
Um, yeah, it's amazing how I mean, anywhere, it just never repeats itself. Nature is just an incredible thing that we take for granted.
Yeah. Hmm. Well, my final question is the same for everybody, and that is if you could give one piece of advice to an aspiring artist, what would it be?
Hmm. Let's see. Um, I don't know. Maybe to just like the life of an artist is embracing like a life of learning, and and I think maybe just a piece of advice would maybe be to be honest with yourself You know, a lot of artists carry themselves in a way. I mean, some artists can get away with it because their work is so good. But I mean, if you're starting out and you think you're great, that's not a good quality. If you're starting out and you know you have a lot to learn, that's a better quality, I think. And if you carry that same mindset throughout your whole career, regardless of what you learn, I think you'll go a lot further. And just knowing that there's always more to learn, and there's always somewhere to improve in your work, you know. And I think that's a big component to the life of an artist, is that you're always learning. You're embracing the life of an education, basically. And
Yeah.
if I were to add to that, would be to buy an easel and paint outdoors.
Yeah. Both good advice. That was fun, man. Thanks a ton. I can't
was a lot
imagine
of
I'll
fun.
ever be in Central California, but I hope we cross paths sometime.
Yeah, I hope
Because
so
it'd be great
too.
to meet you.
It'd be really great to meet you in person, but thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for tuning in to the Undraped Artist Podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe. And if you could, leave a comment or review. That really helps the channel. Please share the show with your friends, and if you're feeling generous, consider a monthly donation at theundrapedartist.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next week.